Chapter 27. The next morning, Sam woke again to find a pencil in his hand and scribbled pages scattered about. When Letha arrived, it was Rom from the tannery that helped to pull the timber away. Rom held out the boots he had made. "Try these on." Sam noticed a pattern of small spikes poking through the bottom of the sole. Letha answered Sam's question before he even had a chance to ask. "Logger boots. They're what you be needin' day to day," remarked Letha. "They're what I was needin' yesterday for the logs," Sam thought. He slid his foot into the boot and wiggled his toes. It fit well enough. He slid on the other foot and stood up, feeling the spikes sink down into the dirt floor of the cabin. "Go on now. Walk around a bit." Letha pointed to the door. Sam found Stu waiting outside. "Oh, nice," Stu called when he saw the boots. "Let's test 'em out." He took off into the woods, and Sam bounded after him. Stu jumped and leapt off of roots and the sides of trees. Sam followed him tentatively at first, but when he discovered how the boots gripped the terrain, Sam was soon bounding after Stu. He never thought footwear would make him feel like he was more grown up, but it sure felt like he stood a little taller in those boots. "They feel all right?" Rom asked as Sam and Stu returned. "Yes, sir," replied Sam. "I made them a little big. You're still growing. Hoping to get 2 seasons out of them. Here's your kit." Rom handed Sam a small canvas bag filled with wax, polish, and a horse bristle brush. "If you're not sure, Stu can show you how to keep 'em nice." "Thank you, Mr. Rom," said Sam. "Course," Rom replied. "Be sure to take 'em off before the moon and all. Don't want you busting through 'em. Luck to you." He gave a quick tip of his hat to Letha and turned back towards town. It was still dark on the 7th morning when the sound of the door timber roused Sam from his sleep. Curious, he thought. He sat up in bed and heard the door barely creak open. Then footsteps outside. No, foot stomps, rather, on the ground. Sounds like horses, he thought. A second later, he heard a distinct snort confirming it. Maybe Alde got out. He swung his feet over the side of the bed and threw on his new shirt, trousers, and boots. The pelt lazily wrapped itself around him. Sam stepped outside, but there were no horses, nor another soul in sight. He made his way behind the outhouse to pee and then walked around the entire cabin, but he was alone. No John, no Letha, no one. The sound of a horse's chuff pricked his ears. "Is that you, Alde?" Sam said aloud. He stepped into the woods as the dark of night gave way to the orange of morning. The cabin itself was out of sight when he stepped around a trunk of a pine to find 2 magnificent horses, both even bigger than Alde. They kicked at the cold, frozen ground, finding a root or two, then raised their heads while they chomped. Each was a shade of brown. One had large white splotches along its body, while the other had only a single white patch on its head, the rest of his coat a lighter auburn. Sam didn't want to spook them. He stood and simply watched as the rising sun peeked through the trees. Against the light, the horses' breath circled up and away from their long faces. One, then the other, looked right at him. "I guess that's a good invitation as any," Sam thought. Sam approached the horses carefully but confidently, watching their ears, and soon found himself only a few feet away from the splotched one. It looked Sam up and down, then took a few steps away. Sam chuckled. "Easy there, easy," he said quietly. He stepped closer again, making it right up next to the horse. Instead of moving, this time it turned its huge head and watched Sam place a hand on its tall shoulder. It was warm, and Sam could feel its muscles twitching as he rubbed it this way and that. "Good morning, big guy," Sam said. He pat the horse firmly up its neck until he was scratching its long jawline. The horse stood still, then slowly leaned its head into the scratching. "There we go." Sam heard the other horse's hooves and turned to see it walking toward him. "You want some too?" he said aloud as he turned. Soon he was scratching down each of their backs. After all, who doesn't like scratches? He thought to himself. Just like dogs. Sam worked his way forward and back on the second horse, then noticed both horses weren't eyeing him anymore. They were looking up and out in the same direction. Neither was moving. Sam followed their gaze and caught a slight movement between the trees. There was barely the faint sound of steps on the ground, but he couldn't quite see precisely who or what they were coming from. One step, another. a doe came into view through the trees. It was relaxed and unafraid, stopping to sniff the ground from time to time. It brought its head up and finally looked directly at Sam and the horses. All four were frozen in place for a moment, until one of the horses chuffed and spooked the doe. It raised its white tail and leapt away, bounding behind the trees until it disappeared. Sam could hear its rhythm on the ground as it made its way further and further into the forest, soon fading into nothing. Well, that was neat, Sam thought to himself. He returned his focus to the horses to find they were motionless and staring. What is it this time? Sam thought as he peered into the forest again. A stocky Asian man stepped out from between the trees in the distance. Behind him, Letha appeared, staff in hand. The Asian man gave Letha a small nod and look of approval, then made 2 clicks with his tongue. The ears on both horses perked up. He gave a short whistle, and the horses trotted away from Sam through the trees. Even with their massive size, there was a gracefulness as they moved. Sam thought this was the best start to a day he had had in Forge so far. The horses arrived at the Asian man's side, and he turned to lead them away. Letha gave them a quick pat as they passed. Their shapes were soon lost between the trees, just like the doe. Letha approached Sam. "Who was that?" Sam asked. "The horses?" "The man." "King. You'll meet him soon enough." Letha gestured that they should walk back toward the cabin. "And the horses?" "Wonderful, aren't they? King has a remarkable gift for those animals. Good workers, just like you," she smiled. "What are their names?" "Tolbo and Ud," she replied. "I've brought you more tea, even stronger this time." "That means it tastes even worse," Sam thought. "Which is which?" Sam asked. "Which is what?" "Which?" "The horses." "Oh, Tolbo has the big spots," she responded. "You'll be seeing them again soon, after your proving, when you get to meet the rest of the boys." The rest of the boys. Sam wondered if there would be more boys like him or Stu, boys his age. Was there some kind of school or a group of young apprentices? He realized Letha was so old that she called everyone, even John, my boy, or some other term of endearment. As such, there was no telling from Letha if there would actually be boys or menfolk. Sam was left wondering. "Let's have a look at what you wrote in your sleep last night," she said. "Maybe we can make sense of those scribbles." But once they were back in the cabin and Letha had the pages in hand, all she could do was raise her eyebrows and comment, "Well, maybe tomorrow." As each new tomorrow came and went, the sleep writing never became more legible. There were more curves and even a few unique shapes that hinted at new forms for the loculus pieces, but there was never anything that Sam, or anyone else, could discern, besides the ornate A of the signature. Sam secretly hoped that it wasn't his own lack of penmanship that was the issue. Reading and writing tended to go together, but he had done much more reading than writing, even though more didn't account for much. Sam instead did find confidence being helpful around town as the days passed. Each morning, Stu would arrive and announce how many more days until proving night. Sam appreciated the countdown, and Stu's excitement for Sam's big night did bleed off a little. Still, Sam found himself growing more nervous as the days passed. Just like the days back home, Sam found the time moved faster when he was busy, and he and Stu had a routine that he happily settled into. They'd head into town and spend the better part of each morning lugging wood to the boxes around town. Mabel's treats always made her the first stop, but they would eventually help anyone that needed it, even Miss Tina. Some days, Stu would say that Amasa was waiting by the river, and Sam would spend a part of the day trying to master the logs, but always ending up wet and cold. Luckily, Stu or John always had the fire going, so he could try again and again. Constance was a daily stop, with a slightly adjusted tea formula. During one of these visits, as Sam was grinding away at his herbs, Stu produced a paper with scribbles of his own and placed it on Constance's table. The entire page was filled with line after line of the alphabet. "You practicing your letters?" Constance asked. "She said I'm a gentleman and a man of letters," Vadoma did. "And that's what a man of letters does. He writes letters." Stu folded his arms across his chest, smiling. It was obvious to Sam that Stu was right. As Stu's luck would have it, Vadoma and Alde came trotting down the main street of Forge, passing right in front of Constance's shop. Stu grabbed his paper and was out the door in a flash. Sam stopped grinding to look out the window as Stu bowed deeply. He handed the alphabet paper up to Vadoma. She looked with surprise, before carefully folding and tucking it into her cloak pocket. She bowed to Stu dramatically, then nudged Alde along. Stu came back into it. Stu came back into the shop, beaming. "She liked them," Stu beamed. "She said she'll keep them close as she travels." Sam wondered where and when Vidoma would be traveling. While Aldi and the caravan seemed to naturally fit into the setting of Forge, Sam got the impression that Vidoma didn't like to stay in one place for too long. The days in town gave way to evenings at Sam's cabin, where Letha or John would be waiting with something to eat for Sam, before sending Stu on his way and making sure Sam was settled in for the night. Once they left and dropped the timber in place, Sam would add a bit of wood to the fire, drink a little more tea, then sit on the bed and open Huck Finn. Within a few pages, he would be so lost in the story and the fight to keep his eyes open that he could never remember actually falling asleep. In the middle of the night, he would twitch himself awake in the strangest positions, like once at the edge of the bed, tongue out, licking his scar. Or on another night, twitching awake with his face pressed against one of the narrow windows, like he was trying to get out. Each time he would breathlessly come to, look around the room and blink as he slowly put the pieces of his life back together. The wolf bite, the burned house, the train with John, the cabin in the snow. As he gained control of his mind again, he would steady his breathing and would feel grounded, more like himself. He would find comfort in checking the fire, getting into bed, and twisting the knob of the oil lamp. He'd watch the flames shrink until the cabin went dark. Sleep would come fast, and his dreams would fly through his mind. His childhood, his travels, then places he never knew, but faces he felt like he did. A younger Letha, back in Charles's library, a man with a beard named Frederick. He would experience recurring scenes of green pastures, horses, and rain. They were images of some other life. He dreamt of people that he hadn't met yet, but knew he would. On the 14th morning, Sam woke to find precise circles traced over and over on the pages in front of him. It was a grand departure from the lines and small curves that he had written in the preceding weeks. Sam stared at them for a long time. He could tell they meant something, but the insight that he longed for was still elusive. Sam could hear Stu sing a tune as he made his leverage to move the timber away from the cabin. Tonight, he'll finish the bite. Tonight, it's proven night. You ready? Stu said as he pulled the door open and let in the morning light. What do you make of these? Sam gestured to the pages on the bed as he laced up his boots. Them's moons. Seems appropriate, seeing how proven night's a full moon and all. Sam knew that Stu must be right. In town, proving night was on everyone's mind. Mabel made an extra special moon bun for Sam. It was sweet, with a yellow center, and Mabel made Sam taste it right there in the bakery. If it wasn't for the heat coming from the oven, Sam was sure that Mabel blushed when he said it was delicious. Rom stepped out of his shop and reminded Sam to take off his boots before sundown. Rom didn't like to make the same boots twice. The banter of the schoolchildren reflected proving night as well, with whispers of, "He doesn't look any different yet. I hope he makes it," and even, "Good luck." Stopping by to see Constance, Sam was surprised that he wasn't required to grind any herbs. Instead, Constance handed him the usual tin box, but gave him instructions to open it after the sun went down, adding pointedly, "We'll see you in the morning." Sam had asked all the questions he dared about proving night, but even so, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness throughout the day. Proving night had been approaching for the past 2 weeks. Every day, Stu would remind him how many days were left, while the simple advice he had received from John, Rowan, and Kofi was to stay strong.